Welcome to the Middleware Tech YouTube channel. In this series, you'll learn about Spring AOP. All code examples used in the videos will be available on GitHub. Let's get started.
Is aspect oriented programming, Spring AOP. So as you know that this is another one module that will work above Spring IOC container, same like a Spring MVC. This module also work above the Spring IOC container. So where we generally use this Spring AOP module, if you see the diagram that we talked about last time, this diagram that we talked about last time, and based on this diagram you can see where we are going to use Spring AOP. So Spring AOP is used into the service layer. See this diagram, Spring AOP is used in this service layer. So what type of task, why I need it? As per example, first we have to know about service layer. It is service layer or business layer. The purpose of this service layer is not to execute database interaction related logic, but main focus of service layer is to implement some functionality like authentication, authorization, logger, or some transaction service, or if I want to expose a particular service as a web service to the external application. But this type of task is generally implement or JMS messaging service implementation. This type of task is generally implemented inside this service layer. So when talking about the Spring framework, under Spring framework, we implement this type of task using Spring AOP. Right, so Spring AOP mainly used in this layer. Right, so one point you can write about aspect-oriented programming is that aspect-oriented programming is used to implement. It is used to implement transaction or transaction or email service or web service if I want to expose it in a web service to external application, authentication or authorization, or logging. So this type of service is generally implemented using the Spring AOP or aspect-oriented programming. So to understand Spring AOP, we should have good understanding about some of the technical terms. We should have very good understanding about some of the technical terms because it is slightly different, not like traditional applications, slightly different. So to understand Spring AOP, we have to understand some of the technical terms. First term, just now it is written, is we have written aspect-oriented programming. Right? Spring AOP means aspect-oriented programming. So when I say Spring AOP means aspect-oriented programming, that means what? What does it mean by aspect? Remember, aspect means service. Aspect means service. So if I say service-oriented programming, then also I am not wrong, But as per Spring API specification, we should always use the term Spring AOP, not Spring SOP. We always use the term Spring AOP or aspect oriented programming. Aspect means service. Service oriented programming under Spring. That's the meaning of aspect. Okay. So that is the meaning of aspect. As I told you that when it came to Spring AOP, we should familiar ourselves with some of the specific technical term. We have another one technical term in Spring AOP. Its name is advice. Advice. Aspect means service. Advice means service provider. Remember this. Advice means service provider. Service provider means who is providing service. That is called advice. Advice means service provider or who is providing service. So as I told you that service, there are different types of services possible. One service can be transaction service. Another service is implementation of web service. Another service is email service, or some other service is logger service, or some authentication service or authorization. So any one of the services possible. Whatever service I'm going to implement, that is called aspect. Fine. Advisement service provider. Who is providing the service? That term is called advice. Advice means service provider. That means who is providing the service. Fine. That is the meaning of advice. Now, whatever it is, now as for example, let's take an example of the service. As for example, take an example of logger service. Logger service. I want to log, right? Logger service. As for example, logger service. Now think about a particular logger service. Now let's see. I want to execute a functionality. So assume I want to implement. We are using the use case called registration, right? Fine. If the use case name is registration, if the use case name is registration, the use case name is registration. So if I want to implement registration, that means we have to follow the flow: view, controller, service, DAO, database, right? That flow. Now for registration, I want to implement some method in the DAO layer, assume, or in the service layer. I want to implement a method like make registration. This is a method name in the service layer. Make registration is a method name in the service layer. Or if you want to see this flow, I think it will be much more clear. If you see this flow, it is much more clear. In this service layer, I want to implement a method called make registration. So user will insert all the values. It will come in the controller. Controller will call service layer make registration method, and this make registration will call the DAO layer method, and will insert the value into the database. Now, when the make registration method is working, so this make registration method is running in this service layer. Make registration. this method executed or executing inside the service layer. Fine. Okay. Right. Now, what I want is that I want to log some details about this method before executing the method and after executing the method, or both, or if any exception comes that time. I want to do some service, I want to implement some service called logger service for this method. Okay, again I'm saying, so this is an use case, is a registration. That use case, if you want to implement, you have to follow this flow. This is a common flow to implement any use case. Depends on the name of the use case. If the use case name is registration, then you have to use registration view, registration controller, make registration. Here also we can write make registration in the DAO layer. It is going to insert value in the database. So what I'm doing in the service layer, I want to implement some task, like I want to do some logger, I want to execute some logger before calling this method and after calling this method, or before and after calling this method, or I want to implement some logger if any exception generated in this method, right? So these are some of the scenario. I want to implement a service for this task. So you can say like make registration method I want to execute. So what I want to execute some service. This is the actual method, right? This is the actual service method. So before executing actual method, I want to implement one service called logger. Let's see here, logger is a service. So this service I want to execute before executing this method. This is one example of Spring AOP. Or I want to implement this logger service after executing this method. This is an example of Spring AOP. Or I want to execute a logger service before and after. Or I want to implement a logger service when there is an exception in this method. These are some of the scenario if I want to execute a particular service. From aspect-oriented programming point of view, technical point of view, if I want to execute a service things, logger service, it can be transaction service, it can be JMS service, it can be email service, it can be web service, anything possible, not the actual logic. I want to execute some service before executing my logic, then that type of service is called method before advice. You remember the term. I want to execute a service. That service can be anything. In this example, I have used logger. I want to execute a service before executing my actual service, then that type of service is called method before advice. I want to execute a service after executing my actual service, then that type of service is called after returning advice. You have to remember the term, after returning advice. I want to execute a service, both the scenario, before as well as after. This type of service is said to be as method interceptor. So what is the full name of this? I want to implement a service before executing my actual service, that is called method before advice. You have to remember the term because this is a technical term that is used in AOP. Method before advice. Method before advice. I want to execute a service. After executing my actual service, that type of service is called after returning advice. After returning advice. You remember the term. Similarly, I want to execute a service before and after both the scenario. Then that type of method is called method intercepted. Method intercepted. Or I want to execute a service when there is an exception in the actual service, then that type of service is called throws advice. Fine? Okay. So let me talk about an actual scenario. This is one scenario I have talked about. Let me talk about another one scenario. In this example, I'm using registration. So let me talk about another one use case to understand this AOP. Okay, let me take another one example. Let me talk about another one use case. Use case. The name of the use case is for banking application. Okay, banking application, you can have multiple use case called deposit, and then withdraw, then find balance. You can go to the ATM, right, and find the balance. Or I'm just taking some of the use case. I want to calculate some interest. Calculate interest. Then I want to transfer some fund from one account to another account. Transfer fund. What I have written some of the use cases. Why? I want to tell you that these use cases that we have written, in which scenario I have to implement which service. In the last registration example, we talked about using logger service. Okay, but I'm not given the scenario that when I should implement a logger service, what is the actual scenario. So that I'm talking about using this. Just see here. Here I'm talking about 5 use cases in a banking application. We have total 5 use cases in a banking application. A real scenario I'm talking about. Now, based on the requirement, you have implemented the complete flow, and based on the requirement, you have to use Spring AOP. So it's a banking use case. Now, which service you want to implement AOP? AOP contains lots of services. Let's see in this example, I want to implement AOP service as a transaction. Okay, I want to implement transaction. Now you have to know that what does it mean by transaction. When I use a concept transaction means unit of work. I'm going to order some food item through an app. So I have ordered the item and I have done the payment. If both the task is successful, then I can get the order. If any one of them fail, I'll not get the order. That means if you want to buy some item from an e-commerce site, first you have to select the item, you have to add the item in the cart, then you have to do checkout, then you have to make the payment. If all this completed successfully, then only you have made the order. Else Else, if any one of them fail, the order will not work. That means transaction means unit of work. Either all the tasks will be successful or none of them will be successful. So to implement transaction, we have to talk about in this current use case scenario, in which use case I need transaction. Think about deposit. If I want to deposit some money in the account, if I want to deposit some money in the account, so already I have assume I have 100 rupees in the account or 1000 rupees in the account. Then I am depositing another 1000 rupees. So what will happen? Once I'll submit 1000 rupees, then after that bank account will add 1000 rupee to the existing account. That means both the operation I need to put inside transaction. So for deposit, I need transaction service that is required. Similarly, I have to withdraw some amount. If I'm going to withdraw some amount, I'll get that amount from the ATM. Assume I am going to withdraw 5,000 rupees. So I'll get the amount from the ATM. On the other time, that 5,000 rupees should be deducted from my actual account also. Both the tasks will be successful. Then the transaction will be successful. That means what? For withdraw, I need transaction. Transaction is a service that I want to implement. Now, if you are going to check, generally we use transaction when I'm going to do some update on the back end. That time we do transaction. If I'm not doing any update in the back end, that time we don't go for transaction. As for example, you have gone to ATM and you are going to check how much balance you have in your account. You don't have to withdraw money. You want to just check how much balance is there in the account. That means find balance. So find balance, you are not going to do any updation on the back end. So transaction not required. No transaction. Transaction is not required. Or you can write transaction not required, because you're not going to do any update on the back end, right? Just for your account, you just want to see how much balance is there. You're not going to update on the back end. Neither you are doing some withdraw or not we are going to do some deposit. When there is no update in the back end, then I don't need transaction. So transaction service is not required for find balance. Similarly, if I'm talking about calculate interest. For calculate interest, if you go to the website, they'll give you some option to calculate interest for a particular loan, either vehicle loan or home loan or personal loan. They have some calculator in their website. You can go and cross check the details. So in that calculator scenario, are you going to do any update on the back end? No. That's why transaction not required. In the fifth scenario, I want to transfer some fund from one account to another account. Assume I want to transfer 10,000 from account A to account B. So when I'm going to transfer the fund from one account to another account, that 10,000 rupees should be deducted from the X account, and same 10,000 rupees should be added into the Y account. That means both the tasks should be successful, and both the tasks I have to put inside transaction in that scenario. So to transfer fund, transaction required. So what I'm talking about here is that in your business, the services that you want to implement in your service layer, so for some of the services are required, some of the services are not required. Some of the services are required, like transaction is required for 1, 2, and 3 use case, and transaction is not required for this and this use case. It is not required. That means what? That means what? So transaction is required for this 3 use case. Just see here, for this 3 use case, transaction is required, service is required, and for this 2 use case, service is not required. Right? So that for some, so there is one technical term called point cut. There is a technical term called point cut. Remember the term. You have to remember this is a technical term in our Spring AOP. The name is point cut. Point cut. What does it mean by point cut? Point cut is saying that it is a point or condition to execute a service or business method. For this use case, I need a service called transaction. For this use case, I don't need a service called transaction. So point cut is a condition to execute a transaction service for a particular business method. Fine. So point cut, it is a condition, point cut is a condition to execute a service. Point cut is a condition to execute a service for a business method. For a business method, right? So this is how we define point cut. Point cut is a condition to execute a service. This service is required for this business method. This service is not required for this business method. So this should have some condition. Based on that, you're going to define that I need the service for this business method. I don't need the service for this business method. That condition is called point cut. Right? Fine. Right? Okay. There is another one technical term that is called advisor. There is another one technical term that is called advisor. What does it mean by advisor? What does it mean by advisor? Advisor is called point cut with advice combination is called advisor. Point cut with advice combination is called advisor. What is advice? Just I talked about. Advice means service provider. Advice means service provider. Point cut is a condition to implement that service provider. So advisor is called, how you define advisor? Point cut with advice. Advice means service provider. Point cut is a condition based on I want to implement service I want to provide, and together we called advisor. Okay, now see, let's see one example. Let's see. Let's see an example. See, we know that we have business service, or service layer service that I have to execute. Now assume you are interacting and this service, assume this service is a transaction. Okay, assume this service is a transaction for a particular use case. So this transaction is there for a particular service called deposit, for a particular business logic, So assume business is deposit. Deposit is the business logic. Fine. And service is transaction. Service is transaction. So business method need a service. I'm giving an example. Any one possible business method, any one service is possible. So business method is connected with some service. Correct? Okay. Now, when you are interacting with any application in banking application, especially banking application, why I am saying is that banking applications are very much secure application. Banking applications are very much secure applications. So for banking applications, if you are going to interact with any particular module or functionality like login, check balance, you are not going to interact with the actual services. No. For banking application, the instance that you are interacting with, that is not the actual instance. That is a proxy instance. That is a proxy. So for banking application, you are always interacting with a proxy instance. As you know, what does it mean, proxy? Someone is not there, but his proxy is present, right? So for banking application, if you are interacting with the banking application as a client, you will never interact with the actual instance, you will interact with the proxy of the instance. Always you will interact with the proxy of the instance, not the actual instance. So business in combinations with service create proxy, and that is provided to the client. What I'm saying, I am talking about the next technical term called proxy. So as I told you that in very secure applications, you will never interacting with the actual instance. Always you will interact with some proxy instance. Right? So proxy instance, right? So that is for security purpose, because when the request is going to, access this proxy instance, then they are going to validate the request with the logging, authentication, authorization, and lots of features is there. It's not only for the request, but also for the response, for both. Now, right? So how you can define here what is proxy? Business in combination with service. Business in combination with service create proxy, and that is provided to the client. This is how it works. Fine. So that's why we just talk about these technical terms. We should know what is proxy. We should know what is point cut. We should know what is advisor. We should know about what is advise, what is aspect, and that we talked about using two use cases here. Fine. So before moving forward, as I talked about here, that I can implement a service before the actual method implementation, after the actual method implementation, or before and after both, or when exception will be thrown. So let's talk about these four type of services. Let's talk about these four type of services using case study example. Okay, so let's understand the Spring AOP programmatic approach. The Spring AOP. Let's understand a Spring AOP example for these services. So I'm talking about now Spring AOP example. Lab will talk about. Okay, let's take an example to understand how I can implement a Spring AOP service. Okay, that only we're talking about here. Just so to do this, what I need to do is that let's do a banking application. Okay, let's do one banking application. So if you want to do a banking application, so let's create a particular class. Class name is bank. Okay, let's go to the next level. So I have a class bank. So assume in the bank class, I have total amount in the bank is 5,000. So int amount that I have in the bank is 5,000. And the bank, I have an account number with the bank. So you can use the account number as, assume this is my account number. String SEC account number is SBI 1234. Assume this is my account number, and this account number, is there in the bank. Account number is SBI 1234. Now what I want to do, I want to deposit some amount in the bank. I want to deposit some amount in the bank. So deposit is a service. Deposit is the actual service. Correct? Fine. So if I want to deposit some amount in the bank, so I should have a method like, I'm just writing rough here, public int deposit. So this is a deposit method. So this deposit, it is going to deposit the amount and going to return the actual amount after deposit. So when you're going to deposit in the bank, what you need? You need how much amount you are going to deposit and what is your bank account number. These two things you need. So when you have these two things, then what you're going to do is like if account number dot equals account number dot equals this dot AC. Let's see, this is also AC, or you can make it here ACC, that is also fine. So account number dot equals this dot AC. It is matching with SBI account number. Then what we want, if it is matching with the SBI account number, then what we want is that I want to, since I'm going to deposit, so you can write this dot amount equal to this dot amount plus amount. This dot amount 5,000 equal to 5,000 plus the amount that I'm going to submit. Once you have submitted, then you are going to return this amount. So you can write return amount. That's it. Else assume the account number does not match. If the account number does not match, then you are not going to return anything, right? Just that return 0, something like that. Return 0 like this, right? So this is the bank class. In the bank class, you have instance variable like this. Save it. Right? Now, what is this? This is a business. A deposit. It's business, right? It's a deposit. Is what? You're going to submit some money into the account. Correct? Now, this is what? This is called business. Let's see here. You have to remember these terms. This is business. Method. Now, what I want to implement a service for this business method. I want to implement a logger service for this business method. So how this logger service look like? If you write here, logger service, okay, logger service I want to execute before business, okay. So that means before method before advice. Method before advice I want to implement. What does it mean? I want to implement a class logger service. Logger service. So this is a logger service class, and this logger service, it is what this logger service class. And here you have assume you have some method 1, and this method is doing something, some logger details like you can write system dot out dot println and just write here called before deposit. Right? This is a logger service. It's a service. So this class object I want to execute before this business. Correct? So what I say, this is a service. That means we have a service that I have to execute before business. Right? So service and business will combine. So what we have, service and business both is there. Just now I told you, so if I want to implement the actual logic here, actual functionality, then I can write here like bank class is there, right? So bank B equal to new bank. I've created a bank class object. So what is this? Business? Or sometimes we use it as a target. Fine. Next, I'm going to create another one class log object. And logger service ls equal to new logger service. I've implemented this. This is service, business, service. Now, just now I talked about one thing, business and service together, business and service, business with service exposed to client as a proxy. Business with service exposed to client as a proxy. So here we got the business, we got the service, and next what I have to do, I have to get a proxy. So generally we implement the proxy like this. Proxy, I'm just studying the structure here. Proxy factory bin PFB equal to new proxy factory bin. New proxy factory bin. So I've created what? This is proxy. Create the proxy, right? Now this proxy is provided to whom? This proxy is provided to the client. So if you want to provide this proxy to the client, how? Just write bank proxy equal to pfb dot get object like this. So it is returning a proxy to the client, and client want to fire the actual business logic in this proxy. So name of the Java project is Spring AOP, right? With method before advice. AOP MBA method before advice. Fine. So just move next, next, and finished. Your project is ready. That was the project. Already you know, right? You have to add some jar files. Jar files means what? For your Spring, so right click properties, take Spring 5.0, Java build, add external jar. For Spring 5.0, where is the jars? Yes, these are the jars. Okay, Spring AOP. I'm adding all. Fine. Apply. Okay. Now you have to remember that for your Spring AOP implementation, you have to add some extra jars. These are the jars is required. These are you have to collect and you have to add. These are the jars. These jars you have to separately add for your Spring AOP application. These jars you have to separately add for your Spring AOP applications. These jars. So already I've downloaded these jars. If you see here, just have to include them. Right click properties, add external jar, and if you come here inside this jars AOP, and these are the jars that you have to include right separately. Fine. Now what I have to do? First, I have to create the service class. So create the service class. So what we are going to do one by one lab step. Just lab. So step one, what we have done, create Java project. Second, step number 2, create or add all the jar, add all the jar, that is Spring jar plus others means AOP jars. So I have to add all these jars, the jars. You need these jars because there is some dependency in our Spring application. Fine. Right. Then step number 3, to create a service class. Step number 3, I have to create a service class. So if I want to create a service class, what I can do, logger service, select src, right click new class. The class that I want to create, assume this class name is log demo, something like that, log demo. Okay, and this log demo class is defined inside a package pp, assume. Just now you have to, right? So already I told you that the class I'm going to create, so that is create service class. Now this is log demo. Now what type of AOP I want to implement? Method before advice. The AOP that I want to implement, that is method before advice. So for method before advice implementation, your class should implement method before advice interface, and you have to import this one, method before advice, save it. So if you have imported, then you have to override the method, right click source, override the method. So in this method you have to provide the logic that you want that gets executed before the method, right? So if you see, there is a before method that is taking 3 parameter, method, object array, and object. If your class implements method before advice, you have to override this method from method before advice class to your class with your own code. So what I want to print some statement, that's it. So how I can print that? Here you can call log L equal to log factory, okay, dot get log, and you can provide a class name, we are using bank class, right? Bank class you can provide. Now bank class we have not yet created, so you have to create that bank class. Okay, you have not created the bank class, right? So just create a bank class here, right click, new class, bank. So for your bank class log, I want to implement this logging. That's it. So I have to create a log object, and I'm calling l dot info, and just write here some statement like service or executed before deposit method, before deposit method, executed before deposit method. This is the service class, method before advice. Now this service class I want to execute, this service class I want to execute before this deposit method. I have not deposit method, just copy paste, right? I have already deposit method. This is the deposit method. Control C, Control V. Now if you see this method, I have class bank. Instance variable must be private type, right? So private string account, and assume this is your bank account, right? Now since this is my deposit method, you're passing the account number and the amount. So if the account number is equal to this dot account, or you can make it here, this account number is equal to if you this dot account, then also fine. It is going to add the amount and return the amount, right? If it is, that's it. Not required this part. That's it. Save it. Okay, you have to use return 0, else it will not give an error. Fine. So this is my business. So that's it. We have written our business class. Correct. Now what I have to do, when the business class is ready, service class is ready, now I have to execute the actual code. Just save it. Now I have to execute the actual code that will show how AOP is called. Create a client class. Create a client class. Right click, new class. And the class name is client.java. And it has a main method. Fine. So in this client class, what I want to do is that I have to create, I already written it, right? I have to go this Control C, Control V. So the client class, first I have to get a bank class object. This is there. Then I have to create advice, that is log demo. Our class name is demo, right? Log demo. ls equal to new log demo. So this is my service. Fine. Save it. Right click, source, format. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create proxy factory bin, PFB. So this proxy factory bin is a part of our Spring framework. So once you have created the proxy factory bin, you have to include PFB dot set target. What is the target? Business is the target. Next, PFB dot add advice. What is the advice? Log demo. That is ls. Next, what I have done, bank proxy equal to PFB.get object. I want to get the proxy, and this proxy I should provide to the client so that client can call the actual functionality. Then client is calling proxy.deposit. It's providing the bank account number and the amount, and it should return an amount. That amount I'm printing. Let me check it is working or not. It should work. Right click, run as Java application. Yes, it is working. And if you see here, this logger, this is the service. Okay, this service gets executed. This service gets executed before business. This is a business. You're printing, right? So here you can just write here total amount is this plus empty. Save it. So right click, run as Java application. Now see here, before business logger gets executed. Right? The logger service executed before your business. That only you're talking about in Spring AOP, right? I want to implement the service before a business. So this is called method before advice implementation. This implementation is called create service, then step 4, create business, then create client, step 5, create client. So in this example, what we have done in this lab is for method before advice. So this lab where service we have used, we have used method before advice. Now I want to use another one scenario after returning advice. So let's implement after returning advice. After returning advice means the logger will be executed after your business. Logger should execute after your business. So if you want to implement after returning advice, so just close all. I want to make it a separate project, so it will helpful to later copy and paste and make that name as after returning advice. After returning advice. Okay, copy. After returning advice, where it is, yes. Now here what I have to do the changes, just see here. Returning advice. Bank class as it is, I don't have to do any changes. Logger demo I have to change because in this case logger demo should implement, not remove this. In this case logger demo should implement after returning advice. After returning advice. So where is this after returning advice? In Spring framework, and you have to override the method, right click, source, override. Okay, that's it. Now in this example, we have my service class would implement after returning advice, and you should override after returning method from with your own code. So what I'm going to write here, same like earlier, I want to just print a logger only, right? So you can use log L equal to log factory get log and provide the bank class. That's it, right? Now what I want to do is that I have to print some message, right? So L dot info, print some message like after execution of deposit method. After execution of deposit method, right? Fine. So this is my service class is ready. Then I'm coming to the client class. And if you see anything else change I have to make into the client class, you can get the details if any changes I have to make. Here also I have created the bank, I have created the service, I have created the proxy, I have added the target inside a proxy, I have added the advice inside a proxy. Then I'm calling the deposit method for deposit. I think it should right click run as Java application where here the logger came before the method and it should come after the method, right? So this is my log demo class. Log demo class implements after returning advice. After execution of deposit method, after execution deposit method. Yes, it's correct. But the okay, I think some of the things I have to change. It is working. The problem is that I don't have to write it here. Okay, just actually just write this, not here, Control C, write it inside the actual business class. Okay, here, write it here, Control V. So just write here business class executed. Okay, it is working, I think. Let me check. Business class executed. Business class executed. Okay, save it. Now execute the client, right click, run as Java application. Okay, just see here, as I told you. Business executed. So once business class executed, after that the logger executed. It is correct. Output is coming after some, it's fine. But the thing is that what is our after returning advice? After returning advice is saying that first business class would get executed. After that the service would execute. Right? So you can see first business executed and after that service executed. That's fine. After returning advice. Right? Similarly, so it is after returning advice. Another one, AOP service, it is called method interceptor. It is called method interceptor. Okay, so what method interceptor is saying is that the service will execute before and after both. Service will execute before and after both. So let me check in the method interceptor. Let me create another one project, okay? and use the project name as Spring AOP method interceptor. Just copy it, Control C, and paste it here. And name the project as Spring AOP interceptor. So this is the project. Now here also all the things are same. Business is same. Client is also same. Only you have to change the service. So here, let me just remove it. And what you have to do the change is that your class should implement method interceptor. Class implement method interceptor. If it is, then method interceptor you have to import, right? And in that case, right click source, you have to override the method intercept. It should look like this. Method interceptor. You override the method, right? Fine. So what I can is that I want to execute the logger before and after. So first you have to create a logger class, log I or L, you can make L equal to log factory dot get log and use the class name as bank dot class. So this is our class that is I've created a logger class object. Now I want to execute before. How? L dot info before deposit, before deposit, after deposit I want to do, but after executing deposit you have to just process it like object t equal to, you can use this arg0 0 dot. Actually the example that we are doing here, this example is different. We have used some other method. See, the example that we have done, this is different because when it is using method inter, talking about method inter class, this is wrong. I'm talking about method interceptor of here we have multiple method interceptor. So okay, you use this class. Right, and you have to override, right click source, override invoke method. Yes, we are talking about this one. Is there some wrong class? Method interceptor is of org aligns.intercept in this package we are using. So overridden method. Now here control X and here control V. So what you're doing here, log L equal to log factory dot get log. You're printing something before deposit. Next, here I have to use object T equal arg0 dot set L dot info. Just write here after deposit and return L or T. Now in this scenario, you'll find that the logger gets executed before and after deposit both. Okay, that is method interceptor. So let me check. Right click clear. Right click run as. Okay, just see here please. The logger gets executed before and after the business methods. This is the business method, and logger executed before and after both, right? So that we find in case of method interceptor. Fine. The last one of AOP service is called, last AOP service we are talking about, that is called throws advice. Okay, throws advice, TA. So let's talk about this throws advice. Close all, create another one project, copy and paste. Talking about throws advice, fine. So you can write P throws advice, TA, and copy. So when I create throws advice, where it is throws advice, TA. So what does it mean by throws advice? Throws advice is saying that you want to implement it when there is an exception. Throws is saying implement a service when there is an exception. Okay. So that means what? I have to create my own exception class object. Okay, I have to create my own exception class object in this example, because still now I have not created my own exception class object. So in which scenario exception class object will come, let me tell you. When you came to this bank class, right, here you have given account number and amount. So it will add the amount and return the amount, whatever it is. Assume the account number does not match, then what will happen? So then what I want to return an exception. Assume account number does not match, then I want to return an exception. To return an exception, first you have to create an exception like account number does not match or account number not found exception, right? So you have to create a user defined exception. So let's create a user defined exception class like account number does not exist. Account number does not exist exception. Okay, I'm creating in my own exception class. Already you know, right? If you want to create an exception class, it's your class extends exception. Correct. And if you want to write something, then write a toString method. Right click source, override a toString implementation. Just here toString, and write something, whatever message you want to put. That should come in the toString. Like write something here. Return. You can write like then something like that. This is an valid account. That's it. So this is what is user class actually. As you know, in Java you can create user defined exception class. So what I want to do is that if this account number does not match, then I want to throw an user defined exception class object. So new this class object, right click, frac, control C, control V. This class object I want to throw. Fine. So if your method exception, that means this should also return exception. Throws exception. Return statement, return type is void. Okay. Okay, you can write here return 0. That you can do. Fine. So if there is an exception, then it is throwing this class exception class object. If there is an exception. So if it is returning an exception, then I want to execute a service. If it is returning an exception, then I want to execute a service. Name of the service is log demo. Right. If there is an exception, then I want to execute a service. In that case, my service class should implement. Tell me, my service class would implement throws advice. Throws advice. So if you're writing here throws advice, then your class service class would override source override the method that is available inside the throws advice. So that method should come, right? Not coming. So this method is actually after throwing. One method is there. Public void after throwing. Now this throws advice, actually see, I should not write it manually. First you have to import this throws advice. Now I think it will come. Right click source. Okay. So just write here public void after throwing is actually the method name. After throwing. After throwing. And it will take some parameter. And you have to implement the logger part. Parameter like you'll take method m, it will take object array, same like earlier. It will take object and it will take throwable. something. Fine. Now we have to implement the same logic. What is the logic? Log L equal to log factory dot get log, and here you can write bank dot class and print L dot info. I want to print, and it is like deposit method created exception, something like that, right? So when you're calling in the client, this client, you have to follow some try catch, right? Put it in the try catch, try catch exception E, like this. Save it. Right click, source format. Right, fine. Let me check if it's working or not. Right click, run as Java application. It should not throw exception because I am using correct username and password, correct amount and bank account details. So that's why it is not throwing any exception. If you are not using correct bank account details, then it will throw an exception. Okay. So if you don't assume I'm using bank account details as SBI 123456, it is a wrong bank account. Now it should throw the service, I think so. Let me check. Right click, run as Java application. Where I have used wrong bank account, right? Okay, amount is 0, so it is not getting executed. Some problem with this logic. Like if it does not equal to, if the account does not equals this, just write it manually. Let me check. Our focus is not the logic, our main focus is that whether this gets executed or not. The account equals this, it will execute, else it will throw an exception. So I have used wrong account number here. Save it. Right click, run as application. Wrong account number. So this wrong account number will come here. It does not match. Or whatever account number you're going to submit, that does not match. See, if it does not match, this equals will not execute. It will come the S block. It should throw account number does not exist exception. It is not throwing the exception. Assume this is account. Assume there is no account. I'm calling the deposit. Okay, you're not printing anything, right? That's why. System.out.println E. So that exception not generated. You're depositing this amount with this account. This is our public class log demo throws advice. Now in throws, I have overridden the method after returning. Now throws advice, right click source, override methods. You're not getting any methods here, possibly that is the problem. Throws advice, log demo implements throws advice, and it is a part of what Spring framework this, and this is an after throwing method. Okay, it's fine, no issues. Log demo class, client class, you're going to throw, then you're calling try catch block. You don't try catch, you throw an exception, because that class is throwing exception. If this class is throwing exception, this bank class, you see this bank class is throwing exception. That means here this exception control C thrown by this also, right? Oh, you're not throwing the exception, you have to throw it here. Throw new account exception, that should work. You're not throwing the exception, now you're throwing the exception. It does not work out. Then it will work. Control Z. Let me check. Right click, run as Java application. Yes. So when this line is throwing exception, right? When exception is thrown, that time I want to execute the service. So here I've executed the service when exception is thrown, right? So these are the 4 different type of AOP services are there. Except that we have some other more examples on AOP that you can explore, but these are the 4 AOP services generally we use with Spring MVC application, so that when the application will continue and any one of the condition match, and it will execute the corresponding service. Now in this example I've used only one service called logger, right? Similarly, same way you can execute multiple services. Same approach, you can execute multiple services.